All right, this is Devin Fields presenting my interview with an athletic director. His name is David Keir. Unfortunately, my um, other two options, a facility manager and entrepreneur, and another athletic director at a larger school, did not get back to me, even though I had emailed them a couple weeks ago. So, a little bit of a bummer there. But I got a last minute referral to speak with this guy, David Keir, through a friend's father who is a teacher at the school that he's an athletic director for. So I was able to it was very brief, but able to get a little bit of information from David, and um, I will present to you what I have found. Hang on a second. So, David Keir, he's been the athletic director for 5 years at Smith Academy in Hatfield, Mass. It's a really small school. The one thing that really interested me about this position and speaking with David was is sort of related to a project that I had just done in a previous class. We had to research a topic of our own, and a topic that I had chosen was dealing with lack of funding and athletic budgets. And you'll probably notice throughout the presentation how David is actually torn in a lot of different positions, and a lot of the research that I had found for this previous project had been dealing with the spreading and giving of more responsibilities to athletic directors just to accommodate budgets. So I feel like David Keir was actually one of those people. So that was one thing that was pretty pertinent to what I've learned so far. But all right, so he was he's the AD at Smith Academy in Hatfield. Uh, so I asked him, what position did you hold prior to this? But it's the same as he does now, actually. So it started. He was a full time teacher and the golf coach. And then as sports became a little bit more was given more responsibilities in the school, an AD was added, an added position for a stipend. And David actually got the job as he was already there. Um, it was like I was saying, it was interesting because it sort of applied to the project that I did. That research on about athletic director positions taking on too many responsibilities, and how they were oftentimes formed into other jobs at the school. So David actually does three. Um, his educational background: he has a bachelor's of science in physical education, pretty common for athletic directors in secondary schools. But he also has a master's in educational administration, plus 30 extra graduate credits in education. So you can see his work towards bettering himself as he gets into the administration aspect of schools and sports. So I asked him, how do you get into the line of work? But like I mentioned before, it was sort of like a natural transition. He was the golf coach and the teacher there already, and they were looking for somebody with experience in that department, and he was the man for the job. His job requirements, he's responsible for all that has to do with the athletic program, like hiring of coaches, scheduling games, practice times, field use, supplies and equipment. He's in charge of that as well. Um, Transportation's a big one. That's like a pretty obvious one for secondary schools because you got many teams going to different towns in the area. He's also in charge of evaluating coaches. That's another big aspect he was mentioning. Like, coaches get evaluated at the end of the season to make sure they're following along the school guidelines and mission statements, and even feedbacks received from parents and players. He even was talking about how he's mowed the grass before and does whatever needs to be done. And I feel like that's sort of a growing thing for high school athletic directors. They, are just there to get what's done. And as the job gets bigger and bigger, the full time positions are being created in the larger schools, and but unfortunately for some smaller schools, the responsibilities are spread very thin. So and also it becomes a budget issue. To save money, maybe you have the athletic director coach and teach also. That way, you're saving the salary of a teacher and the stipend of a coach. So he said he works 50, 60 hour work weeks. 40 of that is teaching though. Um, Small school, so surprisingly enough, the AD responsibilities are the smaller part of his responsibilities. I know that this isn't true for a full time AD at a bigger school, um, but it was interesting to see he spends the 40 plus hours on teaching at work and at home, and then the rest for the other responsibilities to fill in. Um, so, what he liked best about his job, he loved the interaction with athletes. As a coach, he just felt it was a great opportunity to work with all the kids in the school rather than just one sport. He loved being a coach and loves playing that into his responsibilities as an AD also. Um, he liked the coaches and parents and building the relationships with them. He's a coach himself, so he already knows how it goes, what it's like to be a coach. He enjoys helping other coaches in the school. Um, for parents, he was saying like on the positive side, he appreciates parents, supporting the sport program and supporting their kids. Sometimes there are parents who give you a hard time, but it's just part of the responsibilities of being an AD. You take care of those issues, but he said building relationships with coaches and parents was a great aspect of his job. Hatfield it's a really small school. It's a very tight community. Everybody knows everybody, kind of thing. So I think that that helps him in his position. It's a good payoff. So yeah. Some of the misconceptions. He didn't really. I asked about misconceptions, but he really was just talking about how sometimes people think that all he does is watch games. his AD position isn't full time, so he's kind of just like that's like his. He's known as the teacher there, I guess. So the AD stipend aspect of it, he thinks that some misconceptions might be that he just comes to the games and monitors the kids, but obviously there's more to that. The operations in the background are not seen by everybody, but like I mentioned before, transportation, scheduling, practice times, that stuff. That's all unforeseen, or that's all not seen by the cover of the book. So he supervises 20 plus coaches, plus some support staff. Many of the tasks are involving the coaches and the issues that they come up or that they bring to the table. Oftentimes by parents or players, he usually gives them some advice or has to evaluate the situations that they're dealing with. And for challenges, he reiterated that it was time. You just finding time and having a life outside of school. And this is sort of something that I understood too, just from working in some sports settings. It's kind of it's kind of a position where you're working when other people have time off. Because games are like night games or Friday night or Saturday games, and AD needs to be there, needs to make sure things are going smoothly. Um, Time was also a huge factor in that study I was talking about earlier, that research that I was doing in a previous class. It was about job satisfaction among ADs. The research I found, it showed that the number one factor for job-related stress was they had more tasks in a day than they could fit in regular work hours. So it was interesting that he had said that as well. He didn't have a whole lot to talk about facility. Like I was saying, it was kind of brief. We didn't have a whole lot of time, but Hatfield, it's a very small school, so they don't have a whole lot invested into the sports facilities. It's really small on the spectrum. So he was saying they have fairly outdated facilities, but they have adequate space, especially for the outdoor ones. Not particularly the gym, but he said in general they have a lot of space to manage. Um, they have lots of fields, and you're saying, with the space, there's plenty of areas to expand if they need in the future, but not really sure of that timeline because being a small school, the budget's pretty small. Some of the challenges that he faces in his facility, it's just older. The first thing he mentioned was gym space. I guess the gym space is shared between the Smith Academy and also I can't remember exactly, but I think he said the middle school or another school nearby. So that was one challenge that they had to face because they only have one gym. But another huge part was saying that they don't have a workout facility. This also hinders athlete development, in my opinion. It's just I know that when I was growing up in my high school, we actually had a very old and you know pretty terrible workout facility. But our AD had worked to get it a little bit better, get the space a little bit more like better managed, and that was probably 2 years in. So we had 2 years of use of a small workout facility, and our sports actually did get a little better. I remember, kids getting faster and stronger, and it's sort of the underlying role of an AD. You kind of want to be an integral part of youth development. So, it's interesting. He's saying no workout facility was his biggest challenge. And he was frustrated by it. They don't have a weight room or fitness space, so some of the trends he was talking about, just what he was just explaining was just upgrades in fields. The low funding and budgets doesn't really allow for it in the smaller schools, and a lot of the higher end, larger schools that are supported well by booster clubs and stuff, they are getting field upgrades, better stands, things like that. The other part of it is maintenance. So, like the trends are, you spend more money on the cost of maintaining the fields. They look more presentable, better to use for the kids. He's saying, their school kind of needs to be upgraded. Their facilities are becoming a little bit out of date, but unfortunately, the budgets aren't really designed to make new upgrades. But instead, they're designed to just keep things operating. The operating costs. Technology. He even was saying how Smith Academy, the outdoor facility, they don't even have a scoreboard. So he was, it'd be nice if they had a scoreboard outside. They don't have any of them in their outdoor facilities. Even such a small technology advancement would add to their fields, fan experience and player. So that was one thing that he would add also. But the biggest thing, like he had mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, was that the one item he would want to build a new sport facility around would be a workout area. So, he's saying the older facilities that there's a little bit of the trends in the technology, and the older facilities, they don't accommodate the larger audiences. Like he mentioned, the outdoor fields, they don't have an electronic scoreboard, which is tough for the audience and players. Newer facilities, they seem to offer, safer atmospheres or more fun atmospheres. And they're better designed for risks and emergencies. You think an outdated gym kind of has a small doorway out the back, or maybe the surface of the floor isn't, as good as it should be. So, those are things that he would build his sport facility around, and kind of building in with the trends and technology. So, and that was my interview with David.